Larry Levine is the best-selling author of Selling from the Heart and the co-host of the Selling from the Heart podcast. With 3 decades of in-the-field sales experience within the B2B technology space, Larry knows what it takes to be a successful sales professional in this modern world. And in this post-trust sales world, as Larry calls it, Larry helps sales teams leverage the power of authenticity to grow revenue, grow themselves, and enhance the lives of their clients. Super excited to talk to you today, Larry. Thanks so much for joining the broadcast. We finally get to make this thing happen.
No, we sure do. And it's a good early morning. What's going on, Brandon?
Not too much. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. We connected several months ago. And it's funny. So you and I connected through Bill McCormick, who also is part of the Selling from the Heart team, and Jackie Joy. And I had Bill on my show like 6 months ago.
Oh, sir. Okay.
Yeah. And we talked about social media. We talked about LinkedIn outreach using the Selling from the Heart methodologies. And then I talked to Jackie Joy, who is, no pun intended, an absolute joy to talk to. Just a great human being. And then finally I network and meet with you, and we're making this happen. But Larry, I want to ask you a quick question that goes along with those two things. Okay.
All right, fire away.
And it's kind of off the cuff here, but I think it's just as important as talking about being a sales professional, which it's very apparent that you surround yourself with very high quality people when it comes to the people you hire to be part of your team. And there's a lot of people out there today that say that it's impossible to find great people. But then you've got Bill McCormick, you've got Jackie Joy, you've got these incredible people who you surround yourself with and work with. How do you find, or how did you come across these incredible souls to surround yourself with? And how do you find people like that?
I will tell you this, they're out there. And I'm a big believer in this. It's your circle of influence. I've paid close attention to this forever and forever and forever. Is I guard my inner circle. The people I bring into my inner circle, whether that be professionally or whether that be personally, they're like-minded, share some common values. We understand vision. And this is really important because I'm a big believer in building community. And I do it with my personal life. I do it in my professional life. And you've heard that old saying, Brandon, like attracts like. Birds of a feather flock together, and like-hearted, like-minded souls find a way to follow each other. And that's all I've done in building Selling from the Heart. It's what I've done in my personal life. I will stand true to it. There's people that don't come into the inner circle because nice people, but they just don't share common values.
When did you identify those values in your life? When did that become important for you?
I would say over the last 8 years. So I've learned more in my, I'll just a quick backstory on this is I've learned more in my 50s than I did in my 20s, 30s, and 40s combined. I went on some deep soul searching because at 50 years old, I was transitioned out of my career. So I always say I was forced into entrepreneurship. And in doing so, I had to swallow humble pie and I had to figure out what to do at 50 years old, which for most people, they'd start freaking out. But what I did is I said, you know what, maybe this is the time to transform myself. So in this journey, I had to really unpack who I was and what was I going to do and what was the next level of my career? What was I going to look like? And I had to flip the switch on it. And I had to really dig in deep and I do a lot of soul searching. And I had to do that in my 50s.
Yeah. Was there a specific way that you went about that? Did you ask yourself specific questions that you learned from years past of personal development? I'm sure that after you transitioned from that career into what you're doing now, there was fear at some points. So I'm curious, like, how did you get yourself through that time to end up where you are now? Because I'm assuming this right now, Larry, what you're doing now with Selling from the Heart, the team you built this 10 years ago, I'm assuming this probably wasn't in the cards for you. Is that true?
Oh, Brandon, I'm telling you right now. So as I'm speaking to you right now, if we just go back and rewind time and we're having this same conversation on the exact same date, Now I got to do math on this really quick. So, so let's see if I take 8 years off of this. So we're talking 2014.
Mm-hmm.
If you and I are now sitting here and we're having this conversation and you ask me to forward think, would you be doing all of this today in 2022? I'd say, Brandon, you're nuts. You're a whack job. There's no way I'd be doing this.
Wow.
But, stuff happens, life happens, and you got to be able to pick yourself up and you got to be able to deal with it. And I just doubled down on myself. But where I started to really unpack all of this is a couple things. I went back and I started to go back through, and I still have them to this day, all my notes from my very first coach. I hired my very first coach at 40, and I'll be 58 in what, 3.5 weeks. So I went back. So this is 18 years ago. I went back to my very first coach. And that was the person who really took me on this journey to really unpack who I was. And I'll just keep it real simple, right? When I say unpack who I was, does the Larry Levine who portrays himself out in the community the same person who Larry Levine is when they portray themselves online? Now I'm going to take y'all back. That's 18 years ago. So social media wasn't what it is today. So I had to make sure I was congruent in my actions 18 years ago, and I doubled down and I hired a coach. Well, now if we fast forward to the times that, I was career adjusted at 50, I had to go back to what I learned from my coach. I doubled down on my centers of influence. Again, I surrounded myself with the right people who lifted me up. I hired other coaches. I brought in a life coach, and I had mentors. And they mentored me along the way and they coached me along the way. And then I started to surround myself with what I'll call, we call them thought leaders, influencers, things like that, but people that I gravitated towards online, whether that be YouTube, whether that be LinkedIn, whether that be podcasts. And I just started to clear my mind and cleanse my mind of all these things. And I'll tell you this, it's still a work in progress this day. I'm a better man today than I was 2 years ago. I'm a better man today than I was 4 years ago, but it requires work. And that's why I wrote the book the way I did about how your authentic self sells you. You got to go on a journey to really unpack who you are. And
Do you think that you recently discovered your authentic self in this chapter of your life, or when you were, because you've been in sales forever, when you were in sales in your 20s and your 30s, did you at that point tap into your authentic self or know what that phrase even meant?
No, because I really didn't know. I was always willing to try new things. I'm very inquisitive. So when I was in my 20s, so I'll take you back. So like I started my sales career in the tail end of 87. So I would have been about 23 years old, somewhere right in there. But I'm still to this day, I'm very, very, very inquisitive. I love asking questions. And those people who know me. I love asking questions. I love to clarify things. I'm massively inquisitive. So what I started to do, unbeknownst to me, is every time that I was engaged with a decision maker, regardless of the capacity back then, I would just start asking questions around experiences, right? What do you like? What do you don't like about salespeople? What's a great experience? What's a ho-hum experience? What's a horrible experience? And I started to just build up some intelligence around what my customers and future customers had to say about salespeople and how they carried themselves. And I just started to package this all up. But I'm a big believer in this. You're products of how you were raised. Now I'm going to flip this around a couple different ways. I'm a big believer. You're a product of the environment you were raised in as a salesperson. You're also a product of how you were raised as a human being. The reason why I mention this, and it's going to go back to your question about authenticity, is I was raised with a highly, highly, highly relational mother. And I was raised by a brainiac for a father who was a rocket scientist, literally liquid jet propulsion. And so super smart. And he packaged, hey, Dan Dominguez, and so what I did is I packaged both of these together. I brought high relationship to the forefront, and I brought planning, process, and practice that I learned from my father, and I smashed that together. And I just said, hey, you know what? If I'm going to survive in this crazy world of sales, then I have to do something different. I just brought relationships and smarts to the forefront and I smashed them together. I really didn't. I mean, authenticity in the 80s and 90s, I don't even know if the word authenticity was around. It could be, right? I'm not the smartest whip out. But when I started to really take a look at bringing selling from the heart to the forefront, by the way, the podcast started before the book. So, I mean, selling from the heart as it's known today is 5.5 years old, stemming from a podcast that we've done really well with, that has then turned into a wildly successful book that I had no idea what I was doing when I wrote the book, but I was just speaking from my heart when I wrote the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, hey, if you're going to throw the word authenticity out there, you got to lead the lifestyle. You got to really understand what it is. And I'm not here to talk about authenticity in a collegiate level, because there's enough of that out there.
Yeah.
When I talk about authenticity, I call it's at a street level. It's how can I apply this and how can I unpack this as a salesperson or even as an individual? But you have to be willing to go down that journey to unpack it. And I've gone down that journey. It's been a freaking roller coaster. But I've been willing to go down that road. I've been willing to really unpack what's in my heart and what's in my inner being. And I am not afraid to bring it out into the forefront.
Hell yeah. I love that. It's very clear just by your messaging and everything you stand for that that's the case. And I want to dive into authenticity with you. But before that, I find it very interesting how early in your sales career you were able to identify, okay, my father's the brainiac. My mother is the carer, the compassionate one, the one who focuses on the relationships. And you match those two things together. But I'll tell you, when I started in sales at 18, I wasn't thinking about the strengths of my father, the strengths of my mother, is how I can match those two things together. So I guess my question is, it's very clear that you understood your strengths based on your upbringing. Was that apparent to you at that beginning? Like, did you say to yourself as 23-year-old Larry Levine, my mother is this, my father is this, I'm going to combine those and be this? Or was it an intuitive thing for you?
I think it was more intuitive than anything else. I was just really observant in the sales team. So the very first year I was in sales, I was on a dysfunctional sales team, dysfunctional sales manager, and still fast forward to today, all those still exist. But what I was able to do is I have a keen sixth sense, and we all have it, right? So we know there's 5 senses out there, but we all have that keen sixth sense, and it's called BS, right? And my sewage meter was like really high, even in my early 20s. And I just sat back and I saw how people were carrying themselves. I saw how salespeople were carrying themselves. I saw how my sales manager was carrying myself. I saw how they were interacting with their customers, because I go on ride outs early on in my career. We call these field ride outs. Y'all do them today, right? To the best of your ability. Some might be virtual ride outs now, but y'all get where I'm going with this. But I was really observant of how people carried themselves. Now, more importantly, I was really observant of what happened after the sale. And I started to see early on in my career that salespeople would act one way pre-sale. They'd get the sale and they act completely different post-sale. In other words, love them and leave them.
Yeah.
Right? They're a king and a queen before the sale, and they turn into a frog after the sale, right? No, I'm serious. I mean, we can all, I mean, right? Yeah.
I can relate at the beginning of my sales career. Yes.
But, and it still happens to this day. So then what I just, my first year and a half, I was really observant of this. And I go, hey, you know what? I wasn't forced into sales. I chose sales. It's not like my parents forced me into sales, because they hate salespeople still to this day.
Wow.
But I go, you know what? If I'm going to survive in this and turn this into a career, and I really want to stop, on this and turn this into a career aspect of this, because early on, and it's just, again, how I was raised. So I'm the very tail end of the boomers, the boomer generation. So how my parents were raised was this, Brandon. They would, the career that they chose, that was the career that they would stay in because that's how they were raised.
Yeah.
And that's how their parents were raised. Well, it's not like that today, but it's like that when I was growing up, and that's what was instilled in me. So when I got into sales, I said, you know what? I chose this path. I'm going to turn this into a career and I'm going to stay in it.
Yeah.
And I said, if I'm going to stay in it, then I have to do something completely different, knowing that my parents hated salespeople. I have to turn this into a career as opposed to a job. And in order for me to turn this into a career, I have to do things differently. I have to bring planning. You heard the 3 Ps. This is what I learned from my father. I had to bring planning, I had to bring practice, and I had to bring preparation to the forefront all the time because I was held to a high degree of standard when I went to school, and I hated every lick of school. But I had to figure out how to weave those 3 Ps in because that was what was instilled in me. And again, sales is not difficult. So many in sales convolute this stuff to no degree for one simple reason. They veered away from the basics and they veered away from foundational layers of things. That's all I did. I brought non-negotiable standards to the forefront and I held myself to a high degree of standards because that's how I was raised.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's as simple as that, yet it's so difficult to act upon.
It is. And I want to ask you how you do that, just because at the beginning of my career too, not at the beginning, but a few years in especially, it was very similar. I decided I want to take this all the way. I want to become a regional director with this company, open my own market.
Right.
And it was my goal for a long time. And the difference, even if you just went into an organization and the only thing you helped that sales team do was change the mindset, if it's even possible for you to do that, like to change the mindset from job to career, that one shift alone, companies would pay oodles for, because that mindset shift creates a giant shift in the actions, which you said here: plan, practice, and prep, the 3 Ps. But if you're looking at it as a job, you're not planning, you're not practicing, you're not prepping. You're only practicing through the act of doing it, through the act of showing up at the time that you're meant to show up and leaving at the exact time that you're scheduled to leave. But I read in the book, I mean, the hours that you put in at the beginning of your sales career to practice and get better and master it. And it sounds to me like a lot of what you do was natural in terms of your obsession with observing people and seeing how some people were different than others, and the frog during the follow-up, but they're the prince beforehand. Like those observation skills, sure, they might have came from childhood, but I do believe that there is a facet that is intuitive, that is natural. But also your desire to ask questions, I relate to that heavily too, because I've always been a curious person. Even in my childhood, I would ask questions, which probably explains why we both have podcasts and why the book came from your podcast. It wasn't an idea. So I think that it's important to lean into those natural tendencies of ours, right? And like what you said, know yourself. But I guess that's a conversation for another time, because we can really go in that direction.
No, we are, just for a second, because I'm going to give a special shout out to my dear buddy, Dan Dominguez. And so I'm going to put a smile on Dan's face right now when he hears this. But based on what you just said, right, I'm a very inquisitive person. So a tip of the cap to our strategic partnership with the Y Institute and Dan Dominguez. I'm so glad that he entered my life. Is when I unpacked my why and my operating system around my why, my how, and my what. It was like, holy smokes, right? Now I know why I was doing the things that I was doing. So I'm gonna unpack what you just said, because I have my why, my how, and my what. I stare at it every single day. But here's my how. And right, Dominguez, you know this. My how is that I want to make things clear and understandable. That's my how, is I do stuff by making things clear and understandable. And if things are not clear and understandable, Dan Dominguez knows this, I put the brakes on things. Literally, I put the brakes on things. So now if I take everyone back to my early 20s, knowing I'm a highly inquisitive person. I love asking questions. I love clarifying. And if I'm in a meeting with somebody and I really pay attention to I don't care if it's face to face, if it's virtual, right? Because I can see facial expressions. But if it's on phone, I pay attention to tonality.
Mm-hmm.
And if I sense something is not clear, I just keep asking questions and more questions and clarify and clarify. And then when we get agreement on things, then we agree to next steps. But when I'm not clear, it's like I will tell you this. So here's a case in point. Dan, you're gonna love this because I know Dan's out there. So I ordered some swag, right? I just ordered some swag. This was yesterday. And I ordered some. This is how this all plays out, people. This is when you really know yourself. But now, since I really, really know myself, thanks to the Y Institute, now I laugh every single day because I catch myself doing these things. So yesterday I ordered some swag. I'm ordering some more pullovers,
Nice.
right? Quarter zips. And so I placed this order. Well, after I pay for it, I go, holy crap, I screwed this order up. It should have been embroidered, but instead it was going to be like screen printed.
Mm-hmm.
On there, and I go, holy crap. So all night I'm thinking about it. I had a horrible night's sleep. I'm thinking about it. I go, man, I really screwed the pooch on this one. So I'm firing emails off, right before I went to sleep last night. I get an email from customer service. The head of customer service of this company this morning. Hey, don't worry. Did you want them embroidered? Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me out with this? Yes, I will. If there's an added cost, please let me know. My error. So this person says, fine, no big deal. I go, I just want to confirm that these will be embroidered. Dan, you're laughing. I know you are. And so then she goes, hey, everything's okay. They sent me a link. So I paid for the added cost. So then I paid for the added cost. And I said, I'm just confirming one more time so I can be clear. These will be embroidered. Yes, they will. But again, it's the clarify part of me. So people who know me know that if I'm unclear with things, I come to a screeching halt, but it's also why I ask a ton of questions.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a funny story that does tie in exactly with your why formula.
Yeah.
I love Dan Dominguez. Dan's incredible. When he came into my life, he helped me with my why formula too. And
Yeah.
it's similar in one aspect to yours, which is contribution, right?
Uh-huh.
Contributing to others is my why. My how.
Right on, dude. We're the same. We're the same.
Yeah. Heck yeah. My how is better way, which is very interesting because my entire company, podcast, book, everything is be better, right? That's the entire message is be better 1% every single day, make progress towards what you want to accomplish. But I didn't know my how before I met Dan. So when Dan looks at me and out of a list of 40 different options there could have been, he says your how is better way. There's something to the formula when it tells you exactly who you are, but you just didn't realize it till that point.
Yeah.
And then my what is through a foundation of trust.
Yeah.
So
we're aligned. We're aligned on 2 of the 3. It's so good. Right.
Trust is your third one too?
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So, but here's what's important about it. And I'm a big believer, things happen for a reason. Who would have known when I wrote the book and launched the book, and the subtitle being How Your Authentic Self Sells You, that in 2022, I'd be creating a partnership with Dan Dominguez at the Y Institute and really helping people unpack this. Because until you uncover your why, it's hard to really unpack your authentic self. Now let's stop and think about that for a moment. And I'm not here to doubt anybody when they say, hey, it's just me being me. Are you, right? What makes you tick? What makes you come alive? Why do you do the things that you do? And so, you've used the word a couple times in our conversation, intuitive, right? I was doing a lot of these things intuitively, not knowing, is this how I carried myself? But it really wasn't until this year when I really started to unpack my why operating system that I go, you know what? That's me to a T. This is why I've been doing all these things my whole entire sales career. So let's just think about that for everyone who's out there who's watching or listening to this. Everybody is an authentic human being. but it's how we choose to carry ourselves. And it's why I've always used this phrase, authenticity is a lifestyle. It's not a light switch. You don't just wake up in the morning and say, hey, I think I'm going to try to be my authentic self, right? And if it doesn't work, I'm just going to S-can this thing. And then I'm just going to go back to doing what I was. In today's world, what's happening now, what we've been through, what's on store for us in 2023, authenticity, when you can bring your real deal self to the forefront, it's a game changer. It's going to be how fast you connect to somebody, how fast you relate to somebody. It's these little things now that people are really looking at. And I'm a big believer in this around authenticity. It's soft skills will yield you hard dollars. I want sales leaders and salespeople to realize this. I'm not here to dog your sales skills, your product knowledge, or anything like that. It's a vital part of this. Your soft skills, your people skills, your relationship building skills.
Give me
If
some
you
examples of those skills. What are those skills? Like the most important soft skills that you see in the top salespeople?
Appreciation, gratitude. They give a rip. They care. I'm a big, massive believer in this. Again, I wasn't the smartest whip out there. There was people that would outsell me. There was people that out strategize me. But when it came to care, no one was going to out care Larry Levine. Nobody was. And so again, I go back to this, how I was raised. I was, again, even with a highly relational mother, I grew up with 2 sisters. Most of my cousins were females. Y'all get where I'm going with this, is I hung around a lot of females. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay to wear my emotions on my sleeves. I'm okay to cry. I'm more soft than I am, the opposite of soft is hard, right? I am more soft than most people are. Ask anyone who really knows me really well, and they will tell you the same thing. And I'm okay with that. And what was really interesting is my whole entire career in the Office Technology Channel, I was 20 years with one company. I was brought in as the very first salesperson. 5 years later, I bought into the company, and then we started to expand around Southern California. And then, but I had a really unique position, Brandon. I was first employee, bought into it. I was the VP of major accounts, and I was also a business partner. Very dysfunctional role that wound up to be the demise and why I sold back to the majority shareholders and left the company. But the person who was the VP of sales, we would do ride outs, right? So here I am running the major account department. VP of sales is also my business partner, but we do field ride outs together. And he would see how I would interact with people. These would be clients and future clients. I would like bro hug people. I would, guys, I'd give females hugs. We'd high five, things like that. And we would walk outside and he goes, Larry, you're the only person I know that could pull this off. What's the secret? And everyone has a secret sauce. Mine is just how well I can connect and relate to people. It's because it's the way I carry myself. Again, I'm highly emotional and I just lead from a heartfelt position. And that's always been my secret sauce. And if we look at where things are at today, people have been brushing soft skills, however y'all want to classify soft skills. But I'll just wrap them up in people skills and relationship building skills. We have just been funneling this and sweeping this under the rug. And it's why so many people in sales today are transactional sellers.
Can you teach heart? Can you teach emotion that you had at the beginning and your manager's asking you questions about it?
Okay. So here's my philosophy on this, Brandon. Right now, if there's people, see, I've always said, I don't have a PhD. I have no PhD in psychology, human behavior, and all that. I barely passed college, but I got my degrees. But I have a PhD in street smarts, and I have a PhD from getting the crap kicked out of me for almost 30 years selling copiers. But here's where I'm going with this in this soft skills part of this. People, please, please, please key in on this. We all have the capability of bringing soft skills to the forefront. How do I know this? Look at the personal side of everybody who's listening or watching this live, or is going to watch the replay of this. You bring soft skills into your personal relationships, whether you're married, whether you have a significant other, your family, your friends. Let's just think about that for a moment. Aren't those soft skills?
Yeah.
I would say, yes, they are. It's the love, the care, the appreciation, the sincerity. It's selling from the heart. We call it giving a rip. Here's my question to everybody. If you can do this in your personal life, what prevents you from doing it in your professional life? I write about it in Selling from the Heart. I talk about it still to this day. Everybody has the capability and the ability. You're already doing it on a daily basis, but you're disconnect from it in your professional life because it's been a societal norm forever and a day. We don't bring some of this stuff to the forefront. And that's what I'm pushing the envelope on this one.
Yeah.
And I will do it until the day I check out of life.
Keep doing it, man. Keep doing it. That's why I asked you that in our conversation recently. I was like, how long are you going to keep doing this? And I think it's so important because Selling from the Heart wasn't around in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. And most people don't even know it exists today. And what they do think exists is these old school tactics of wearing the old suit, wearing, like you call it, empty suits, right? Which I want to talk about. Wearing the old suit, believing that the way that you use your body is the ultimate decision maker and the other person and what they're going to decide, and using these sly, fast words and using these different patterns of communication, like tricking people, almost like this manipulative style of sales that was around when I first started in sales in 2012. And I was taught these things and I practiced these things and I saw some results with it.
Yeah.
But again, I was in a way manipulating people to do the thing that I wanted them to do, not figuring out what that person genuinely needed and helping them solve that actual problem. So this is a problem out there in the world amongst many sales companies who are still training the old-fashioned hard sales approach from the 70s, from the 80s.
And here's the sad part of this, Brandon. It's going to be around long after we're off this planet.
Wow.
Right. It's just I wish I could fix it, but I mean, sometimes you just can't fix the unfixable. And I say this with all the respect to sales leaders and salespeople out there. We all have choices and so forth. I mean, leaders choose how they want to run their companies.
Yeah.
And I only say this because, what's interesting. I'm a big believer in this saying that what's forever old is forever new. The things that I speak about, the things that are near and dear to me, they're not new. It's not some new age of thinking. People, this has been around for hundreds of years. But I knew this a long time ago, that short-term vision does not create long-term sales sustainability. And so when you're short-sighted, when you're so focused on the sale, it comes out. It comes out in your body language. It comes out in your words, it comes out in your eye movement, and people sense it. And I want us to think about everything I want us to really key in on this. We all know where trust and credibility sits in the sales world today. It's anemically low. It has been for decades upon decades. So if we know this, I'm a big believer perception's reality, Brandon. Perception is reality in the eyes of the people who mean the most to you. And if you're in sales, and I'm a sales geek, it's your clients and your future clients. So we have to be cognizant of every conversation that we enter, whether that's that very first conversation with someone or the ongoing relationships that we're building with our clients. They're benchmarking you against every other salesperson that's entered their life. Yeah. And we have to keep trust and credibility in the forefront. Well, how are you going to build that? That if I'm in sales today, if I'm a sales leader, I'm a salesperson, and here we are, we're knocking on 2023. If I'm going, what are the things that I am going to double down on to catapult my career in 2023? Regardless of what my company's doing. Again, I'm a big believer. You can control what you can control. You can't control what you can't control. You can, salespeople and sales leaders out there, you can control how you show up. So what I mean by this is I want people to really key in. You want to skyrocket and you want to 2x and 3x your sales results as you start heading into 2023 and beyond. Bring trust and credibility to the forefront. Keep that front and center. Paste it right on your forehead. Put it on a mirror. Put it on your screensaver on your phone. Ask yourself, how will I build trust and credibility? What will I do? What will I double down on? What do I need to do in order to bring this to the forefront? I'm a big, huge believer in this. And this all wraps around trust and credibility. And it's one word. It's called comfort. The more comfortable you as a sales leader and you as a salesperson make your clients feel, the more comfortable that you make them feel about you, the more comfortable they will become with you. The more comfortable they become with you, the more they will start sharing things about themselves and their inner business secrets that they are not sharing with somebody else. People, this is not rocket science. This is simple stuff, yet so difficult to execute on a consistent, disciplined behaviors. It's just people aren't doing this. We're chasing all these other things, tips, tricks, hacks, quick fixes, the silver bullets. Hey, y'all have it. It's inside of you. It's what you're willing to do in order to stand out from the sea of sameness and mediocrity that's in the sales world. The faster you can connect to someone's heart, the faster they will open up to you. The faster they open up to you, the faster things start to happen.
Let's talk about what you just said. Consistent, disciplined action. We're talking a lot about character and values and authenticity, and all those things are so vastly important, probably the most important topics of this conversation. But if looking from the outside in at your success over the years, I don't have the full picture, right? But just from what I've read, one of the differentiators of success for you, even to this day, because I asked you the last time we talked, is the action that you put forth on a daily basis to find new prospects, to nurture your existing clients, all of the above. There's no denying that aside from everything that we've talked about, there is a layer of consistent, disciplined, hard work and action, specifically since we're talking sales when it comes to prospecting. And you have an entire section of your book on prospecting. You said last conversation we had that you spend an hour, 7 days a week, 45 minutes to an hour prospecting, even to this day.
Yep.
So my question for you is now, after everything you've learned and know when it comes to outreach and targeting new clients and starting that conversation cold, they don't know you, they don't know selling from the heart, kind of a two-part question. When you're prospecting, what is your outcome when you are cold prospecting, not a referral, cold prospecting? What is your outcome? And how do you begin that relationship with clients when you're cold prospecting today?
Yeah, the whole key when I'm prospecting, and by the way, prospecting is non-negotiable. I'll repeat that. Prospecting is non-negotiable. Salespeople today have negotiated themselves out of why they should prospect. And it's why I'm going to get to your question, but one of my favorite quotes in Selling from the Heart, Brandon, it plays out is exactly what you just said, is salespeople today have hypnotized themselves into believing what they're not doing doesn't work. Now stop and think about that, because there's some double negatives in there. Salespeople today, and I'll even throw in sales leaders, sales managers, have hypnotized themselves into believing what they're not doing doesn't work. People, prospecting is at the core of what you all have to do every single day. But for me, the outcome of a cold outreach prospect is to engage somebody in a conversation. That's it. It's not trickery. It's not pattern interrupts. It's just to engage somebody in an insightful conversation at a professional level. That simple. But here's what happens. And again, y'all want to throw darts at me? It's fine. Go ahead. People who are watching this or watching the replay, y'all can throw darts at me and I'll go toe to toe with you on this. These people that pattern interrupt people to death, all the cutesy, artsy, fartsy things that people do to grab someone's attention, that might grab somebody's attention and open the door, open the conversational door. But I'm here to tell you this. If you have low business conversational skills, you have low business acumen skills, you're going to be dead, set, caught as being an empty suit. And I'm being really professionally direct with this. Whether you're young in your sales career, in your 20s, you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, or you're well into your tenured age, when you're prospecting, you open up conversations, open it up in a business-like manner. Be respectful. Show that you know something, that you're worthy of having a conversation with, and bring something into the beginning of that conversation that gets someone to rapid fire think. That person is worthy of me opening up and having a conversation with. And let's just stop and think about this. I mean, a lot of my business is selling from the heart does come from referrals and things like that. It comes from, the book and the podcast and things like that. And some of you guys are going, well, Larry, it's easy because you got a podcast and you got a book. Hey, there's nothing easy in life. I work my ass off to get where I'm at. But I do it because I want to contribute to a greater cause. That's my why. I want to raise the level of professionalism in the sales world. So I eat what I do. I eat my own dog food, so to speak. So I can look somebody in the eye, dead in the eye, with conviction, with clarity, and say, you know what? I'm opening conversations with C-level executives all around the world based on being professional, bringing some insight into that conversation immediately, and sharing with them that I've been working with people just like them. And here's the things that we've been working on. Hey, I'm just curious, any of these sound familiar? Again, I mean, there's all different kinds of ways, right, to prospect. I get it, right? But let's just keep in mind, all these people have heard all these things before.
Let me ask you this, more of another tactical
Uh-huh.
question. And I ask you this because I just want to get an idea of what your specific approach looks like.
Sure.
So there's some people out there who their prospecting in an hour's time looks like them making 150 phone calls / messages / whatever. It's not as personalized, but they are getting a lot more volume out there in the marketplace, right? There's some people who spend an hour and they start 5 conversations and they send 5 messages or make 5 very specific phone calls. Where are you leaning more towards, and how much preparation do you put into your particular, give me an actual example of a prospecting session for you today?
No, I totally will, because I'll let y'all know when we went live with Brandon, it was 9:00 East Coast time. It was 6:00 in the morning West Coast time. I'm not saying this so I can add another, badge of honor onto my sleeves. I'm sharing this with you because I just know when I work the best, when my brain's the freshest, and I do the things in the morning that I need to do to start my day off. So I start my mornings off in a certain way. And then my very first thing I do is prospect. Now I prospect into many different time zones. That's why I prospect at the times I do. And it's blocked. I have it blocked on my calendar 7 days a week. 7 days a week. I prospect for 1 hour every single day. And in that hour, I don't care how many calls I do, right? I don't care how many calls I do, how many emails I send. This is my goal at the end of 1 hour. At the end of 1 hour, everybody keen on this because I'm so outcome driven, is at the end of 1 hour, I want 2 meetings set on my calendar somewhere in a 2-week span. And I do this every single day. I don't care if it's 1 phone call, 1 appointment. If it's 5 phone calls, 1 appointment. If it's 3 email outreaches, if it's 3 social touches, if it's 3 LinkedIn messages. My whole goal in that 1 hour, I want 2 appointments. That's it. And I've held myself accountable to do that 7 days a week.
Wow. Even Sundays, you're blocking off that early morning time.
If for some reason, if StreamYard had the ability to screen share right now, I would show people my calendar. Those who know me know I do this. And I'm not BSing anybody, right? We can even go personal, right? If you even asked my wife, she would tell you the exact same thing. I block the time on a Saturday morning and I block the time on a Sunday morning to prospect. And this is why I can look a sales leader and a sales professional in the eye and say, I'm right there with you. I am in the trenches. I got to grow my business just as much as you got to grow yours. I got to prospect just as much as you all got to prospect. I'm calling, I'm emailing, I'm social touching. I am doing whatever I can do to business develop inside selling from the heart.
How much, just revisiting that question, because I love what you just said, that's very important. How much time and preparation would you say you actually place into, let's say there's a client, you don't know the client, you don't know any decision makers inside, but you have the job title, you reach out to them. How much preparation do you do before the initial outreach? Because you said something earlier that was really important. Bring a level of business acumen and understanding to the conversation early so that they want to have a conversation with you. How much preparation do you put in beforehand so that you're on that specific level of business acumen?
Not much. And then everyone's going to go, holy crap, I can't believe Larry Levine just said not much. Here's the key. I'm a big believer. I coach and teach to this. I'm a big believer in relational prospecting.
Tell me more.
Yeah. Everyone just please key in on this. You're 1 degree of separation from your best conversation you will ever have. It comes right through. Hear me out on this, right through your network. So I coined this term relational prospecting. And for me, and when I say not much research, I have a list of clients, right? I have my list of clients, hey, I'd like to go after and things like that. But what I've done is I've looked inside my clients at Selling from the Heart. And I've built high, tight, deep relationships with my clients. And then what I do is I look inside their networks. And I look inside their networks and I say, I'll use you, Brandon, because I'm talking to you. Hey, Brandon, I see you know these 3 people just like you. How well do you know these people? And I listen, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to play off of what you said. And then the next thing I'm going to ask you for is, hey, would you mind bridging an introduction for me? Whether that be a phone call, whether that be an email, whether that be a social touch. If it's in an email or if it's in a LinkedIn message or something, can you bring us together? Can you let this person know why it would be in their best interest to have a conversation with me?
That's gold.
I will tell you this. My hit ratio is really high, really, really high.
Yeah.
Again, I'm leaning into the relational aspects and I'm leveraging this to prospect. And what was really interesting, if I go back in time, I got into some massively heated arguments with old business partners of mine. Because, if you remember, I had a dysfunctional role. I was in sales. I was also a business partner. So they were trying to hold me to the same degrees of accountability they're holding everybody else to. And I would say this, right? Insert their names. I'd say, right, you shouldn't care how I prospect and how many dials and how many things I do. At the end of the day, it's how many conversations have I started and how many of those have moved to meetings on calendars and so forth. And all I did is I just leaned in and I learned this, or I learned this from my very first business coach. I told you I had one when I was 40. The power of building networks. The more you invest in your networks, the more you'll be able to collect from your networks. And it goes back to this 1 degree of separation. Most people haven't been coached and taught the power of their networks. See, still to this day, right? I've never thrown a baseball card away, Brandon. When I was a kid, I collected baseball cards. Massive, massive baseball card collector. But I never really did anything with it. I collected them and that was it. I wish I would have done something with them decades ago. But now I'm just sitting on a gazillion baseball cards, complete sets, all kinds of stuff. Topic of another conversation. But today, people collect names, and that's all they do.
Yeah.
They collect names and connect to people, and that's all they do. I'm very strategic about who I connect with. I don't connect with everybody, but I build deep, meaningful relationships with the people that I connect to, especially my clients. And I'm all about driving new business. I'm 100% about driving new business. But driving new business should not come at the expense of your current customers. It should come right through your customers. They are the key. They will unlock the door to prospecting gold. The more you pour into your clients, the more they will pour into you.
Wow.
The more you double down on their networks and combine them, right? Again, I'm dating myself, but follow along with me on this. It will play out. I remember as a kid, I would do coloring books, right? Some of y'all may not know what coloring books are, so you can all Google it. But in coloring books, right, you would have to connect the dots. You'd start at 1 or A, depending on however, that book was set up. And you would connect the dots. Well, at the end, when you connect the dots, you took out your box of crayons and you colored in that picture. And that picture came to life. So here's what I submit to everyone who's listening and watching. Connect the dots in your clients' social networks.
Connect the dots in your
Connect
client's
the
social network.
dots in your clients' social networks. Your 1 degree of separation from your best sales opportunity and your best conversation. Your clients know people who know people who know people.
Yeah.
Let's just think about that for a moment. This is relational prospecting that nobody, and I mean very few, are doing.
Yes.
When you can relationally prospect through your clients' networks, they will open the door. They will literally open the door to people. I know this because that's how I met Dan Dominguez.
Wow. Yes. That's how I met you.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. I think a lot of people, including myself, are working a lot harder than we have to because we're continuously chasing after the new business, cold outreach. I think if everyone just replays many parts of this conversation, but especially the last 7 minutes, where you talked about that specific strategy, connect the dots in your clients' social networks, that one piece alone could be the 7 minutes that earns you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in your sales career. But the underlying thread is you must nurture your existing clients. You must treat them like gold, pour into them so that they pour into you in return.
Yeah. I guess why this means so much to me, Brandon, is in the world that I grew up in. It's the word we use today. It's the modern version of it. Is I grew up as a full cycle sales rep. I had to do everything. I had to prospect. I ran my meetings. I had to do the discovery. I had to do the demos. I had to, win the business. I had to nurture the business. Today, right? Today we got, again, y'all can throw darts at me. I'm a big boy and I can handle it. But in today's world, you got SDRs and BDRs who then pass off to AEs, who then pass off to customer success. And before you know it, You got 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 people, all in different roles, talking to your customers, and then the finger pointing happens. So all I'm saying is this worked for me because I was a full cycle sales rep. Now, to all the other, BDRs, SDRs, AEs, all these, you can take drips of what I just said and make it work for yourself. But I am here to tell you this, whether you're an SDR, BDR, an AE, doesn't really matter. Insert acronym and whatever title y'all want to associate with, right? Because salespeople are so enamored with titles, it blows my mind, is y'all have networks. Y'all have customers. Y'all have lists of people you'd like to do business with. Y'all have friends. Y'all have thought leaders, community-minded people out there. Start building networks. Can I share a quick story?
Please.
So a special shout out to a guy named John Ferrara. John Ferrara is the CEO of Nimble. And to me, John's the father of CRMs, the godfather of CRMs. He started Goldmine years and years and years ago in his garage in Southern California. But he came on, and then he did very well for himself, had a great exit, and then he started Nimble. And Nimble it's a CRM. It's a great CRM. It's one of the CRMs we use here at Selling from the Heart. And what was really interesting, he came on the podcast. He came on the Selling from the Heart podcast. This would have been 2019, early 2019. We had an opportunity to have lunch in Southern California. This would have been, I'm putting my thinking cap on this one, Brandon, but this was probably pre-Thanksgiving 2019.
Okay.
So that's just keep in mind, we know what happened shortly thereafter, right? Right. We don't have to go down that road. Do the math on this. It's right before Thanksgiving 2019. We knew what happened, right, into 2020. But at that conversation, we had no idea what was going on. So we started talking, and we were talking over lunch. And John said something that was really profound. Let's everyone key in on this. He said, those salespeople out there that will double down on their networks, that will nurture their networks, grow their networks, influence their networks, will future-proof their sales career. Holy smokes. We all know what happened March of 2020.
Yeah.
Now think about that. If you rewind that conversation to 2019, now if we fast forward to 2022, I'm going to ask every sales leader and every sales person out there, if you want to future-proof your sales career, start giving a rip about yourself. Start giving a rip about your marketplace, your community, your clients, your future clients. Double down on your networks. Start unpacking who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. Invest in your relationships. The more you invest, the more you'll be able to collect. Continue to do what y'all are doing. Add this layer into what you're doing. I promise you this, you will 2x your sales results in 2023, but it's going to require some work. It's going to require massive action and disciplined habits. If you're not willing to take massive action and bring disciplined habits to the forefront, then just accept the results that you're going to get.
Yeah. You've given plenty at this point, Larry, like everyone could leave with like 5 different things that they could actually go do. And I do encourage everyone, you've listened, you've learned a lot. You've probably had a lot of aha moments, but take this and apply the knowledge. Don't just listen, take it, apply just one thing, not all 4, 5, 6 things, one thing. But I selfishly want to ask you 2 more questions, Larry. I want to respect your time.
That's all good.
2 quick ones, just because as a full cycle sales rep where you wore all the hats, you must have figured out a sweet spot with the nurturing of your existing clients that didn't take much of your time, yet still was highly effective in nurturing those relationships. So is there one thing practically today that you do that allows you to still leave a touch point with that client, but is highly effective, yet takes little of your time so that you can reach all of your clients? What is that way that you nurture them?
I'll tell you, what I do today is what I did 20 years ago. So what I did is when I was in the Office Technology Channel, I had this in my office. I had this big whiteboard, and I wrote down. I had 3 columns, and it was column A, column B, column C. You can call it tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, however you all want to do this. And I put my clients in tiers based on my criteria of how I would rate them on from revenue to number of machines, things like that. I'm just giving you what I did in the Office Technology Channel. And based on that, my A clients, my tier 1 clients, they saw me every 30 days. My B clients, tier 2, they saw me every 90 days. My C clients, tier 3 clients, they saw me semi-annually. But I went a step farther. My tier 1, my A clients, I went face to face with them every 30 days. I put it in my calendar. This goes back to taking massive action, disciplined habits. Well, now if we fast forward to today, I have clients all over the world, so it makes it extremely difficult for the FaceTime. However, I show up for them every 30 days. They're getting an email. They're getting a social touch from me. I'm paying attention to what they're doing on social media. And I'm showing up every 30 days. They know I'm out there.
Wow.
Again, it's not rocket science stuff, but it takes massive action and self-discipline. Can I share a quick story before we wrap up?
Yes.
One
yes.
more.
Yeah.
And it really ties into this because you heard me talk about trust and credibility. And I'll just drop it. You were going to ask, but I'm just going to drop it anyway. I just finished the rough draft of my second book, and it's a continuation of the selling from the heart as I build this movement out into the sales world. So my second book, it's still going to be selling from the heart, but it's how sales professionals build trust in a post-trust world. And it's based on 4 core sections. It's our trust equation. It's about building authentic relationships, combining it with meaningful value. The accelerators are inspirational experiences and disciplined habits. This will all play out when the book comes out early next year in 2023. But I want to key in on disciplined habits, because if you remove disciplined habits out of the equation of authentic relationships, meaningful value, and inspirational experiences, you have a wobbly 3-legged chair. You heard me say, if you want to 2x your sales results, it's going to require massive action and disciplined habits. And so I'm going to take y'all back. So I'm going down this Napoleon Hill journey. And I read the book Mental Dynamite. Mental Dynamite is a conversation between Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie. The Napoleon Hill Foundation, Don Green's the executive director of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. He found the transcripts, brought this book to life in 2020. It's a great book. It's like 250 pages, solid freaking gold. But I'm going to take y'all back and I'll just give this is why I'm a big believer in massive action and disciplined habits. So Napoleon Hill's in his 20s. He's a struggling magazine writer. He has the opportunity to interview Andrew Carnegie. This is 1908. So people, this is 114 years ago. What's forever old is forever new. And he expected this to be a 20-minute conversation. He finds himself in Andrew Carnegie's 64-room mansion in New York City. And he expected this thing to be a 20-minute conversation. It turned out to be well over 2 hours. But here's the kicker. It's really early on in the book. Napoleon Hill asked Andrew Carnegie one question. And the question is this. He said, Mr. Carnegie, what made you so successful? Now stop and think about this. He earned his wealth through Carnegie Steel. And in 1901, he had sold Carnegie Steel to JP Morgan, which we now know as JP Morgan Chase. Mm-hmm. Check this out, people. In 1901, he sold it for $480 million. Do the math on that one today. Just take 480 million, Google search, and convert that to 2022 dollars. And that is a boat freaking load of dollars. So here he is the wealthiest man in the world. He asked him, what made you so successful? Andrew Carnegie simply said this. The key to my success were 2 things, self-discipline and constructive habits. Self-discipline and constructive habits. I hold myself personally accountable to self-discipline. And here at Selling from the Heart, right? We call those disciplined habits. These are the two hardest things for sales leaders and salespeople to comprehend. And that's why y'all chase tips, tricks, hacks, and the silver bullet. And why in Selling from the Heart, I write that most salespeople are consistently inconsistent. No personal accountability. They lack discipline, and there's no disciplined habits. And then they whine and moan and they cry because they're not where they want to be. Simply, look in the mirror. The mirror doesn't lie. Only the person looking into the mirror lies.
Whew. Thank you for sharing that story. And I'm so excited to read your next book. Kayla Perlove said the same thing.
Oh, hey, Kayla.
In the chat. So one final thing, Selling from the Heart, guys, you can go get a free copy of Larry Levine's book, Selling from the Heart. Link is in the description. You pay the shipping and that's it. And the coolest thing is Larry will actually sign the copy of the book for you. So there's a little of everything in here, everything we talked about and plenty more. Finding the real you, brutal honesty, validating your identity, servant sales leadership. So we talk about sales leadership in this book, consistent prospecting. It's so many things. There's more than 10 chapters in this book, hundreds of pages. My final question for you, Larry, while people are clicking the link to go get their free copy, is out of everything in this book, if there was one thing that you would advise a salesperson to focus on heading into this next year, what would the one thing be that you advise they maybe just flip to that chapter? And even if they only read that one chapter, that would be valuable enough for them heading into the new year.
Oh, wow. It's hard to really nail it down into one, but I mean, you're asking me for one, is read, reread, and read chapter 6. Chapter 6 is all about a servant-led lifestyle.
Why that chapter?
Why that chapter? Because it transformed my life. I mean, when I started to give back to the community, it started to come back to me. And how we can look at this and how I want salespeople and sales leaders to view chapter 6 is there's a big difference in my world between service and to serve. The act of service, SERVICE, is reactionary in nature. It's a pure defensive move. To serve, SERVE, is offensive in nature. It's proactive. The only way you're going to understand what it means to serve or lend a helping hand is get involved out in the community and lend a helping hand. Let's flip this around in a business context for just a moment. That means how well moving forward in 2023 are you going to lend a helping hand to your clients, which means you got to change how you start interacting with your clients. Instead, right, there's nothing wrong with service. I'm not here to poo-pooey service. But what I am here to say is flip your mindset around. And in 2023, what would it be like? Read chapter 6. And then what would it be like if every interaction with your clients, you started it off this way? Thank you for allowing me to serve you. How can I be of value to you moving forward? Thank you. And then just stop and just listen. And what happens next is going to change the course of how you interact with your clients. But you got to be willing to go there.
That's fascinating. I didn't expect you to say that chapter, but after you explain why you would choose it, it makes a lot of sense. Larry, we've spent a lot of time together this morning. I'm grateful for your generosity in the time that you gave, because this is longer than we talked about. So thank you. Guys, Selling from the Heart, I read the whole book. You got to go click the link below. Chapter 6 is incredible, but I think every single chapter is incredible too. There's a lot in this book as a sales leader, as a sales professional, new in the role, been in the role for 10, 20 years. There's something in this book for you. Read it before the next Selling from the Heart book comes out, so you can be ready for that one next year, early next year. But Larry, I'm just super grateful to you again, sir. Thank you very much. I'm glad that we made this happen, and I know that it was helpful for so many people.
No, I appreciate it. It was great talking to you. I look forward to the next conversation, Brandon.
Absolutely. We're going to make it happen. Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
Salespeople everywhere, There are guaranteed to be at least 10 gold nuggets of information in this conversation. I'm going to challenge you. I want you to comment what the number one gold nugget was for you, whether you're watching or listening on LinkedIn, podcast, YouTube, whatever it may be. Comment your number one gold takeaway. But again, please, there's so much information in this book. There's so much information in this conversation. Don't just absorb it all. Okay, take just one thing, turn the podcast off, and then go apply that one thing, whether it's your authentic self, whether it's prospecting, nurturing with your existing clients, specific things to do on social, starting the conversation, so many different things we talked about, servant-led leadership, all these things. Take one of those things and use them because there are so many gold nuggets in this conversation with Larry Levine. Links are below to connect with Larry on a deeper level on LinkedIn. Go check out the Selling from the Heart podcast. But most importantly, above all, get yourself a free signed copy of Selling from the Heart. You just paid the shipping. That's a pretty killer deal, right? Go to the link in the description. If you found any value from this conversation with Larry, we didn't show you any ads. We don't have any sponsors. All that we ask is you share this show with just one other sales professional or sales leader who could use this the most. Thank you for watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.